right then. Once again, thank you to all of you who are joining us on our call today. On behalf of the End User Subsidy Lab, I want to welcome all of you to this webinar, which we believe is going to be of great interest to all of you. So what we'd want to do is probably start with a few housekeeping rules so that as we get along, we're able to flow seamlessly. First of all, we request that you all mute your mics on your end unless you're speaking or presenting. We also encourage you to use the chat function to ask questions, which we will pick up as we go along. We will also have a time for question and answer. And at this point in time, those who are able to will ask you to raise your hand. And once you raise your hand, we'll be able to see you and enable you to go ahead with your question. So my name is Pauline Gidugu, and I am the team leader for the Africa Clean Energy Technical Assistance Facility, which is implemented by Tetra Tech International, based in Nairobi. And I will be joined today by speakers who will be speaking to us about IDCOL in Bangladesh. And we will also have, as I've said, a time of question and answer. So for us as the A-Staff program, we are very keen on ensuring that the discussions around subsidy and subsidies for off-grid solar products continue. Last year we did a study on the subsidies for the off-grid sector, and this study has now become one that is being is propelling conversations and discussions around end-user subsidies for this sector. For myself, even personally, I'm very excited to be moderating today's session because it brings together two of my career paths. I started my career path in microfinance before I came to the off-grid sector. So the discussions around Bangladesh and what has happened in Bangladesh is of interest even to me personally, from a microfinance background, knowing that Bangladesh was the home of the birthplace of microfinance, but also some of the interesting things that Bangladesh has done through the Infrastructure Development Company Limited, a government-owned company, which we also call IDCOL. So A-Staff is partnering with SMAP, Lighting Global, and Gogla on the End User Subsidy Lab, and we want to ensure that at this point in time, we continue to have these conversations until the point where we see the actual implementation of pilots and off-grid sector subsidy schemes. So I'll quickly run through the agenda that we have for today. And we're going to start our conversation this morning, with an introduction to the End User Subsidy Lab. And this will be done by Dana Rysenkova from the World Bank, to just introduce the concept of the Subsidy Lab and what it is that we're doing and what it is that we want to achieve out of that lab. And then it will be followed by a 30-minute presentation by Pavel Karim, who I will be introducing later. And our discussant following that presentation will be Anil Cabral. So I'll be introducing both Pavel and Anil just as we get to the point before their presentation. After that, we will have the question and answer, which we have allowed ample time for. So there's plenty of time for us to richly engage with the conversations and the presentations that will be done today. It's my hope that you have already had a look at the case study that was sent beforehand. A lot of the presentations today will be based out of the summaries that are in that case study. So feel free to ask questions in the chat, as I had said before, and also the speakers will also be engaging you in the chat function. So I want to turn this over now to Dana Risankova to give us an overview, an introduction and an overview of the End User Subsidy Lab before I go ahead and introduce the speakers. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very much for this opportunity to provide a short introduction about the End User Subsidy Lab perhaps for those of you who were not able to join our first webinar that was about Rwanda Propor RBF, which is also where we launched the End User Subsidy Lab, a joint initiative of GOGLA, ACE, and ESMAP. My name is Dana Rishankova, and I am the global lead for energy access at the World Bank. So what is the End User Subsidy Lab? It can probably be best described as a knowledge and advisory platform that really comes from the acknowledgement that affordability will be one of the main constraints for achieving SDG 7. And it recognizes that because of that, the end user subsidies will need to be a part of the solution, but also that there are some inherent risks in applying them at scale. And therefore, the lab aims at grounding in knowledge, piloting implementation of end user subsidy schemes, and sharing lessons learned, and supporting mainstreaming of successful approaches. I should highlight that at this point, the lab is focusing on the off-grid solar sector because we believe this is where the knowledge gap on what it means to apply well-designed end-user subsidies is the most acute. But we're looking at potential complementarities with other sectors such as clean cooking, and also in the off-grid sector, also looking not just at the sort of domestic market, but also at the productive users potentially. Next slide, please. So as you know, the off-grid solar sector has undergone a tremendous growth trajectory over the last decade, providing clean energy services to hundreds of millions of people. But now, as the market matures, it is also clear that other hundreds of millions may just be left behind if you use the market mechanism alone. And this is because either they are too remote or they are too poor to afford even tier 1 systems. So they are too remote to basically be cost effectively served, or they cannot pay the full cost of the systems. And this is in many places compounded by the deep fragility and of course now also by COVID-19 impacts. So these are the vulnerable households on the right that today they just cannot be reached unless there is some subsidy elements to reach them. This is though not to say that the end user subsidy should now replace all the other mechanisms that we have put in place in the sector so far. The affordability gap cannot be reduced sustainably if we don't work in parallel on both supply side and demand side. And that means that, you know, all the mechanisms on the supply side on the top here, they're still important because we still can leverage innovation and economies of scale to reduce the prices. And if we reduce the prices, of course, the affordability gap goes down. And also keep working on the reach into deeper rural areas. And in parallel, everything on demand side is not just about end user subsidies, but it's also about making sure that consumer finance works, making sure that through consumer awareness activities, we drive demand for the products. It includes support for productive uses so that people have more money to actually pay for these services. And next slide, please. Therefore, the end user subsidies really should be seen as just one piece in the puzzle that needs to be applied hand in hand with other instruments, such as enabling policies, results-based financing, and other supply-side grants, access to finance, including consumer financing, consumer awareness, and so on. But it is a piece in the puzzle that we really don't know enough about. Next slide, please. And therefore, the End User Subsidy Lab will build expertise and knowledge in the sector, promote exchange and facilitate learning, develop effective subsidy designs, and mainstream end user subsidies into energy access programs. Next slide, please. And through this work, we are hoping to answer questions such as how to ensure that the scarce public funding is used in the most efficient way. What are the possible ways of targeting? How do we define the affordability gap? And how do we minimize the leakage? And how do we minimize the negative impacts on the existing market and ensure sustainability? So we will do this through several concrete activities. The first one is the Go to Knowledge Hub, which this webinar is a part of, where we will gather and curate the available resources on end user subsidies. The second is the actual work on end user subsidy designs. And here we are planning to work with the governments, development partners, and of course in consultation with the private sector and other market players to design specific pilots. And then the lab would help to fundraise for the implementation of the pilots and accompany them with monitoring and evaluation so that we can inform the potential scale-up, replication, and mainstreaming into the national electrification programs. And then there is also the third element, which is the enabling transformative thought leadership. And this basically means that we just don't want to learn from the existing activities, but also encourage basically the sector to think creatively about what else can be done. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, this is currently a joint initiative between ACE, GOGLA, and ESMAP, Lighting Global. But we are very open to other members. So if you have an interest to contribute to the lab, please let us know through this webinar or through the contact that is in here. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. And now I'll be happy to move to the main topic, which is really a deep dive into the Bangladesh IDCOL program with a specific focus on how this program addressed affordability.
Thank you very much, Dana. I think that if you do have any questions on how the lab has been set up, please feel free to put those in the chat function and also to reach out to us as we have put together this webinar. So we want to move, not to waste too much time, we want to move on to the lab, to the main purpose of today's webinar. Today's webinar really will focus on Bangladesh, as I said, and the Infrastructure Development Company Limited, which is government owned. Now, as we focus on this, on IDCOL, we'll be addressing the issue of affordability and looking at how that challenge was overcome in Bangladesh through a combination of grants and consumer financing. The Bangladesh program has been the largest national off-grid electrification program in the world, and one of also the longest running one that went from between 2003 to 2018, and it peaked in 2013. It provided electricity services to about 20 million people with a total investment of 1.1 billion US dollars. The economic and financial analysis by the World Bank suggests that the program had significant positive net benefits for not only the households, but also IDCOL itself as an entity, the government and partner organizations. There were net financial benefits that exceeded $1.5 billion, with half of the net benefits flowing to households. The government was the second largest beneficiary through a treasury gain of 384 million US dollars on taxes and 90 million US dollars from savings due to avoided kerosene subsidy. So while the design of the IDCOL program is well known, the mechanisms through which it addressed affordability are less understood. And that's what we want to dive into a lot more in this webinar today. We'll be asking ourselves, critical questions, and I ask the audience to really engage with the speakers today to actually critically look at what was the design and what made this design work. Was it because there was a pivotal role that was being played by the government and participation by the government? Was it because there were benefits that were being derived by each of the players within the market? Can we replicate this model in Africa? Is it possible to replicate it? And what will it take for us to replicate this kind of model? The other question we'll be asking ourselves was this really a subsidy or was it not a subsidy? And whether it was a subsidy or not, what made it work in the way that it did, to a point where the electrification went from being at 37% in 2003 to 92% by 2019. So you can see a huge impact in the implementation of this program. So what is it that made it work? So without belaboring or asking the questions on behalf of the audience today, I want to introduce Pavel Karim. He is the head of renewable energy at IDCOL. And Pavel joined IDCOL in 2004. So that's really in the early days of the program, which started in 2003, and has played an instrumental role in the design and implementation of IDCOL's renewable energy initiatives, spanning solar home systems, biogas, and improved cook stoves at household level, as well as solar mini grids, solar irrigation, rooftop and ground-mounted solar, and biomass electricity projects for commercial purposes. Pavel studied engineering and business and has worked in both government and private sector and has decades of experience in the renewable sector. Once Pavel gives his presentation, we will ask Anil Cabral to just make some comments on it, to discuss generally what part of the presentation that Pavel will be making, and also from his own experience. So Anil is a former lead energy specialist at the World Bank, and Anil worked at the World Bank from 1995 to 2010, where he developed and supported off-grid electrification projects in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, China, Myanmar, India, Bangladesh, Tanzania, Liberia, among others. Between 2007 and 2019, as a World Bank team member supervising the Solar Home System program, he had close association with the Bangladesh Solar Home System program and its principal participants, including beneficiaries. He received the Professor Robert Hill Award for contributions to photovoltaics for development at the European Photovoltaics and Solar Energy Conference and Exhibition in 2005. So we wouldn't have had better people to help us understand the IDCOL program and the IDCOL model than Pavel, who himself is still with IDCOL, and Anil, who worked with the development around this. So let me pass it along now to Pavel. Welcome, and take us through your presentation. And again, welcome the audience to put in their questions that they might have as Pavel is making the presentation. Put them in the chat function, or wait until the end when we come to the question and answer session, and you can raise your hand and ask the question directly. So over to you, Pavel. Welcome. Pavel, you will need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for the nice introduction, and also thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak in today's event. So as you mentioned, I got involved in the IDCOL Solar Home System Program since the very beginning. Actually, I mean just 1 year after introduction of the program, and I mean still continuing with IDCOL. So and I'm very delighted to see in the participant list Mr. Raihan Elahi, who was actually involved at the very beginning of the IDCOL program, and basically he was involved in the structuring of the program. So it's nice to see him in the participant list. So sorry. So I'm moving to the next slide. So we already mentioned about the background of electrification in Bangladesh. So in 2003, when the program was started, our electrification rate was less than 40%. So 15 million people, rural people, are having a lack of electricity access. Rural households, not rural people, and 15 million rural households were lacking electricity access. And at the time, it was estimated that if the then scale of penetration continues, probably it will take another 30 years or more to actually have universal access of electrification in Bangladesh. So at that situation, actually, I mean, the IDCOL Solar Home System Program was started. So government has committed actually to ensure universal access to electricity by 2021. So it was another, driving force for actually promoting solar home system program, and it actually received full support from the government. Government arranged necessary financial support from development partners. So World Bank has played a major role actually in arranging the funding and also arranging the technical support for the program. So at that situation, actually, we actually explored the Bangladesh actually explored the alternative option for actually meeting the electricity demand for rural households. And that's how actually our solar home system program started back in 2003. So what was the implementation strategy for the program? So initially it was actually thought that as the beginning polling mentioned, that Bangladesh is very good in microfinance. So we have a lot of microfinance institutions in Bangladesh. So probably, I mean, if they are involved, and also at the time, some of the organizations were already involved in selling solar home systems to the rural households. So the government as well as development partner, World Bank, thought that probably if this infrastructure is actually considered for dissemination of solar system technology, probably that will work. So that was actually a good starting point for our program. And also it was considered that public-private partnership model should be introduced. Here government will have contribution here in the program. At the same time, that will be the program will be rolled out by engaging private sector entities like NGOs, microfinance organizations, and also private sector entities, private limited companies, maybe. So that was the strategy considered at the very beginning of the program. And in 2002, we did a small pilot to see the effectiveness of the program, to see how the solar system works, how customers are accepting the systems, and also how the service, after sales service, as well as collection of loan repayments from the households are working. So based on that, actually that worked actually successfully in 2002, and based on that, actually the programs started dissemination in early 2003. So for ensuring this public-private structure, already IDCOL was operating at the time. IDCOL has been created to actually promote public-private partnership. So government as well as the World thought probably IDCOL would be the right instrument actually to actually give the ownership of implementing the program. So that's how IDCOL was introduced in the program, and IDCOL started implementing the program. So this is the program structure. So if I briefly explain the structure, probably you have a better understanding of the program. So you can see three yellow boxes, three committees, three different committees. So the left one, this independent PO selection committee. So the PO selection committee is the committee which actually selected the partner organizations who are going to actually implement the program, who are going to sell the solar home systems to the customer houses, who are going to provide after-sales service. The same organization is selling at the same time they are providing after-sales service, and also collecting installments. So the same organization is doing that. So I've seen it different in some other programs. So here the organizations, the partner organizations who will procure the solar home system equipment, they will sell it to the customer houses, and they will also provide after-sales service. At the same time, they will collect installment from the houses. So the partner organizations have been selected through independent committees. Initially, we started with 5 partner organizations, and later we increased the numbers gradually, and at some point it was 57 partner organizations who were actually implementing the program, from 5 to 57. And at the same time, we developed another committee, the technical standards committee, the committee which will actually ensure the technical standards of the solar home systems to be installed on the program. And also the committee also approved the products which will be sold to the customers. So that committee actually selected the suppliers who can sell the products and who will sell the products to the partner organizations. So you can see from partner organizations, the suppliers, they are not actually selling to the customers. They are selling to the partner organizations. Partner organizations are procuring the systems, solar panels, batteries, charge controllers, other appliances from the suppliers, and they are selling it to the customers. The partner organizations, they are actually installing the solar system in the customer households, and they are responsible for providing after-sales service, as well as they are selling the systems at mostly at credit. 99% of our solar systems was sold in credit. So they were also collecting installment from the households. And once the system has been installed at the customer household, they are reporting us that they have installed the systems in a particular month. So we are actually seeing the performance of the system. So we are sending our inspectors to the customer households and see the performance of the solar home system, and then only, I mean, on a sample basis, and then only we are actually disbursing the fund to the partner organizations. It came as both grant and loan. So and the partner organizations are supposed to collect installment from the household, and they're supposed to repay IDCOL. So it's I mean, the payments were made. The upfront payment was made to the partner organizations. Once they have installed the solar home systems, then only they are actually getting I mean, financial support from IDCOL. And the money was actually arranged by the government of Bangladesh. Government of Bangladesh arranged fund from development partners. Most of the fund came from the World Bank, and there are some other development partners who actually supported the program. So that fund was arranged from the development partners by the government of Bangladesh, and it was actually transferred to the POs, and POs actually extended the credit facility to the households. And there was also an operations committee who basically actually I mean, discussed, the committee actually met once in a month and discussed the progress of the systems and the challenges faced by the partner organizations, and try to actually address those problems. So this is in a brief the program structure. So you can see the year-wise installation of solar home systems. We started back in 2003, as I mentioned, and you can see gradually the number of solar home systems increased over the years. In first 3.5 years, we installed 50,000 solar home systems, but in 2012, 13, 14, actually we were selling more than 50,000 systems in a particular month. So it had an exponential growth. But after 2016, I mean, the government took a huge initiative for dissemination of green electricity in the rural areas. So, I mean, more and more houses got electrified from green electricity, and then sale of solar system went down, and we the last sale was done in 2018. So altogether, we have installed 4.1 million solar systems from 2003 to 2018, and by 2016 we have seen that 40% of the rural population are getting electricity from solar systems. At the time, 57 POs were selling, and almost 29,000 people were employed in those 57 partner organizations, as well as a number of suppliers actually supplying the product in our program. So fund mobilized, the program actually mobilized more than $1 billion funds. The loan was more than 600 million, grant was 81 million. Mostly the grant was used for providing subsidy to the solar home systems, which was, I'll come to that. Initially it was a higher amount, but subsequently, I mean, gradually the subsidy amount was reduced, and at some point it was only available for smaller capacity solar home systems. But for bigger systems, there were no subsidies since 2012. So down payment from customers are supposed to pay a small down payment, 10 to 50% of the system cost, and with the system cost, they could actually get a solar home system at their household, which was supposed to be installed by the partner organizations, responsibility was with the partner organizations for installing solar home systems. So POs have also have a good amount of equity in the program. More than $200 million equity was injected by partner organizations, that is NGOs, MFIs, and private sector entities. Manufacturers have also contribution in the program, around $30 million. They have actually installed. I mean, they had their setup for battery setup for panel assembling, and they were set up for producing the lights, other appliances, and also for charge controllers. So if you can see that 63% of the funding came from the World Bank. Second, 14% from ADBs, 12% from JICA, and the others were, these were three financials. Also, Islamic Development Bank has some contribution in credit, and rest funding came from, rest funding was for grant support, and those funding came from GPOBA, USAID, KFW had a good, very good contribution, 3% of the system. GIZ also provided a good, 3% of the system cost is grant. Then also GEF, we started the program with GEF and World Bank support, but gradually, other development partners came into, dissemination of the program, and also scale up of the program. So, responding to consumer demands, actually, customers demanded mainly 30 to 65 per watt peak solar home systems initially, because initially we didn't have smaller capacity systems. Smaller capacity systems, there were some challenges, technical challenges, and also EFC generation was not sufficient to use this tubes. But later, when LED and then CFL, corporate fluorescent lamp, and LED came, so we could actually introduce smaller capacity solar home systems. So gradually, the demand for 10 to 25 watt peak solar home system increased significantly. You can see from the picture, and also because of introduction of LEDs in the later years of the program. So we can see that the households could actually get same amount of benefit from larger systems used by the customers earlier. So it's a small example of actually how the financing was actually went through under the program. For example, at some point of time, as 20 watt peak solar system price was $140. So that time we gave $20 as a subsidy. So system price for household came down to $120. So this is the actually the price at which customer could see, could buy the solar home system, $120. So at that price, they're supposed to pay 10 to 15%. So if it's 15%, it's $18. Then remaining amount is $102, and this amount is the loan from partner organization to the household. So household could pay repay their installments in 1 to 5 years, but in most of the cases, we have seen it between 2 to 3 years. So interest rate was roughly 60%. 60% is not actually, flat rate. It's a on reducing balance rate. We have calculated from the program. That time the market price was around 10 to 12% interest rate. So it's a bit higher, basically, because to actually have the additional money for POs to actually take care of their operational expenses for providing after-sales service and also collection of installments. So with that financing structure, we've seen that the monthly installment size is roughly $5, which is affordable for the rural household, and we actually. After installation, as I mentioned earlier, after installation of solar home systems and after verification of the systems, we used to disburse the fund to the partner organizations. So basically, we refinance the loan extended to the household. So out of $102, we used to actually provide initially 80% of the system price. So it was $82 loan from IDCOL to the partner organization. So the remaining amount was the contribution from partner organizations, around $20. So here, if you see that household is providing $18 as down payment, PO is contributing around $20. IDCOL is refinancing $82. So that's how actually, the system is financed, and also on top of that, IDCOL is also giving $20 subsidy per solar home system. So, and also IDCOL loan tenure was a bit higher, 5 to 7 years. Actually, an interest rate was 6 to 7%. So I will explain this a bit later in the subsequent slide. So basically, our tenure was a bit longer. Longer than the tenure extended by partner organizations to the household, because the mechanism was like this, because this actually allowed the POs to have some money for reinvestment. So they could use the reflows coming from the customers and they could reinvest the program. So and that actually helped to scale up the program. I mean, if the tenor was saying that POs would not have sufficient money with them to actually reinvest and buy more equipment and sell more solar home systems. So the design was like this, so that POs have some time to actually hold the money, and they could use the money for scaling up of the program. So this is the front flow I already mentioned in the program structure. Basically, we received money from development partners. Government received the money. That money came to IDCOL. Then with that was extended from IDCOL to the partner organizations, and finally loan was going to the household. Grant is not, but grant is actually provided in such a way that actually customers are getting benefit from the grant support POs are actually extending. So debt service households were supposed to pay to POs to IDCOL, and IDCOL is supposed to pay to the government, and government to the development partners. So this is the fund flow structure. The fund disbursement process I briefly mentioned. So after installation of solar systems, POs are actually supposed to submit all the disbursement requests to our database. We had since the very beginning of the program, we maintained database for all the customers. So at this moment, we have 4.1 million customers data with us. So they have to submit the information to our database. So once that is done, then actually that was added to our database. Then we at least 10% of the solar systems was initially actually inspected by our solar system inspectors, who are actually operating from different parts of the country, and they have to actually report back. So after reporting, if we see any discrepancy, if system is not installed, or if there is a problem with the system is not functioning, or there are some other discrepancies, like the amount is not matching with the amount they have extended to the households. So basically we would actually adjust the distributed systems from the total submission of solar systems, and finally we used to disburse the money to the partner organizations, and POs could actually rectify the problems, address the technical problems, address the other financial problems if there is any, and they could actually resubmit the solar systems. So those at that time actually we used to check almost 100% of the resubmitted solar home systems. So in this way, actually, we made sure that actually the systems are properly installed. So we didn't initially we found some cases of actually some discrepancy, major discrepancies, like not installed system, but submitting disbursement request for payment. But subsequently, as we have conducted extensive verification of the at the field level, So, and we actually inspected more than 50% of our solar home systems. Out of 4.1 million, we have inspected more than 2 million systems. So inspected. So that's how actually we ensured that the systems have been properly installed. So how subsidy was determined at the very beginning. So we have conducted a study. We conducted survey, household survey, and we have seen I try to identify what is the current expense. I'm talking about the survey conducted back in 2002. So we have identified what is the actual expense of household. So how we can reach that number, making a financing structure. So the structure I just mentioned. So that household does not need to actually make any new additional expenditure for lighting purposes. So with the same expenses, actually they could have a solar home system, and with a better lighting support, and also support for their mobile charging and others. So that's how initially the program was designed. So at the very beginning, number of solar systems was very low. So subsidy was higher, but gradually, it was designed at the very beginning that gradually the subsidy will be reduced because more and more number of solar systems will be sold in the market. So the operational expense of the POs will be not like the beginning. So there will be reduction of expenses for the POs. Also when more suppliers will come to the market, then cost of a solar system equipment will also come down to some extent. And also if POs could sell in volumes, they could profit in volumes. So probably that their profit margin would not be that much to actually continue the program. So that's how actually initial sales price was determined. The initial subsidy, initial financing structure was determined. And also in the different types of the program, actually the price of solar home system was, solar home system components was, collected from POs, from market, and that's how actually the price of solar system was actually determined. Also, we got information from the market, information from the POs at what price they are selling. So we have seen that there is a reduction of price over the period of time. Initially, it was very high. Subsidy was required more, but with the gradual increase of number of solar systems, we have seen that the price is coming down. Also, introduction of, as I mentioned, introduction of CFL, then introduction of LED. Customers are getting the same benefit with smaller size systems. So affordability has increased. So subsidy was not that much required. And also we have created competition of the in the program. Initially, only few POs worked, and then there were no competition. But at some point, we have seen that in every areas of the country, at least 2-3 partner organizations were working. So we can see that customers have actually options. They can compare the product from different partner organizations, compare the service from different partner organizations, and then they could actually compare the price. And that's how actually they could buy solar systems. So this has also helped to actually reduce the price and reduce the subsidy amount. So you can see the price of solar system. Initially, actually, it was $400 plus. At some point, due to increase in solar panel price increased somewhat. Increased from 425 to 559. But gradually, in 2018, we have seen that average. System prices come down to $127. This is a number of factors. The price of equipment came down. Also, people are preferring going for smaller capacity systems because I mean, because of same benefit they used to get with the larger systems at the beginning. So price as well as subsidy amount, initially subsidy was around $80, you can see, but gradually the subsidy came down to only $9, and also only for smaller capacity system. We didn't have to actually provide subsidy after 2012. We didn't have to actually give subsidy for systems more than 30 watt peak system, 30 watt peak. So we could actually withdraw the subsidy from larger capacity solar systems. And also another thing is to be mentioned here that we have provided the same subsidy for all sized solar systems. So the poor households who are buying smaller capacity systems, they could actually get bigger percentage of subsidy compared to the people who are actually buying bigger systems with the same subsidy amount. So the subsidy percentage is also lower. So SHS cost declined over a period of time. You can see that with this increase in sales. So, for example, in 2004, 50 watt peak system price was $11.3. In 2017, it was per watt peak. In 2017, it was only $4.4 per watt peak, and subsidy support initially per watt peak subsidy support was $2.72. But in 2017, it's only $0.24, and only for smaller capacity systems. Buyers of those smaller capacity systems are only poor households. So, I mean, positive and negative sides are there. I mean, affordability has been increased over time because of price decline, but there was a huge competition in the market. So that is also another reason for the reduction of price of solar systems. So solar system price for households. Initially, I mean, when we started the program, initially there were some, control over the price. So for first 50,000 systems, we had a control that, we asked the POs to actually provide the price of solar systems at which they are going to buy. They are going to sell it to the customers, price breakdown of solar systems. And also we compared this with the market, and also we put a price cap on 10%. I mean, it should not go beyond 10% of the price they have actually submitted to us. But subsequently, when more POs recruited, so and more suppliers are introduced in the market, so we no longer had actually control over the price. So you could see the prices went down because of the competition in the market. So the phased out of subsidy, you can see initially we provided say $90 subsidy, $70 for reduction of price of solar systems, and $20 for institutional development of the partner organizations. So that continued till 2011, and after 2011, there was no subsidy for 2011, 2012 till 2012. So after 2012, there is no subsidy for bigger capacity systems, but only for smaller capacity systems. And also, initially, Biden got was $70. So at some point, after 2012, it was only $20. And also, we provided institutional development grant for $20 per solar systems, because at that time they are selling a very small number of solar systems, and also they had a lack of capacity, so we provided them support. And in 2012, since 2012, we didn't provide any institutional development support for the POs, but the POs which came under our program had some support for institutional development. And also loan tenor, if you see, initially it was 10 years. Loan tenor, interest rate was 6%, and we refinanced 80%. But it gradually we reduced the numbers with the increase of solar system sales. We have seen that, if you go for 6 to 8 years in 2009 to 11, then 5 to 7 years, and in 2016 it's only 5 to 7 years. 5 years was, smaller loan tenor period was for older partner organizations, but 7 years was for newer POs who have joined the program recently. Interest rate was same. I mean, larger POs has to actually, I mean, experience higher interest rate and lower refinance amount, but larger POs, so I mean, newer POs got actually, I mean, lower interest rate, and also 80% was refinanced. So that's actually, I mean, we actually created some, I mean, breathing space for new partner organizations so that they can also participate in the program. You can see here was selection. I mean, we started with 5 peers in 2002, and gradually we increased the number to 58, and 1 peer actually left out in 2014, I think. So we ended the program with 57 partner organizations, and also there were many equipment suppliers under the program. Initially, very few panel suppliers, only 2 panel suppliers were at the beginning, only 1 battery supplier at the beginning. Charge controller supplier was 3, I think. So, but with the, I mean, when the market actually, I mean, actually developed, and more and more solar systems are sold, so we have seen many more suppliers are coming. All those suppliers actually had to actually take approval from our technical standards committee for selling the product under our program. So quality control mechanism was very important for our program. Actually, I already mentioned that we visited more than 50% of our solar home systems. We visited the customer household. We checked the performance of the solar home systems. We have there is a agreement between partner organization and the customers. So we checked the customer the agreement copy, and also identified the rate at which the customers are getting solar home system. So and we I mean also verified the collection performance of our partner organizations. That was very important for sustaining the program. We I mean verified the collection performance of all the offices. At some point the partner organizations had more than 3,000 offices countrywide. So we I mean visited all those offices on a regular basis, and also check the collection performance, because if collection performance is poor, I mean, they will only sell the system to the household, but they will not actually be able to actually repay us. And also independent technical and financial audit was done. Training actually played a very important role in our program. We provided TOT training to the PO, I mean technical and managerial staffs, so that they could train their own staffs. And also we provided customer training. So we could not provide customer training to all, but a good number, so that actually the knowledge is disseminated from one customer to others. And we also established a call center on our program. So I mean that number has been disseminated I mean throughout the country. I mean on top of the charge controller of all solar systems that was imprinted actually. So if there was any problem, then they could actually call to us, and so we informed those problems to the partner organizations, and later we followed up with the POs as well as the household, so that I mean their problem has been addressed. So monitoring mechanism, we have I have already covered that. We had 12 regional offices. I mean, we have more than 350, I mean 103 technical inspectors who could actually monitor 350 solar systems per month. And we have regional supervisors and also IDCOL officials who have actually supervised the performance of the inspection. Independent technical audit was done. Evaluation was done by the development partners. For all development partners have their own details of our program. So these are the numbers of training we have conducted. We have provided training for around 500, management training for PO staffs for 200. We provided staff training. I mean, those were conducted by the TOT trainers. Training of the trainers we have conducted. So the trainers have actually trained their own staff, and that was monitored by, we had a separate training monitoring team, so that we could ensure that POs are properly conducting the training, and we also provide given technical support for training for staff training, customer training, and also we developed training. Technician pool. Those who are not actually working with the partner organizations, but we collected the participants from different part of the country, so that once the program has ended, so at least we're leaving some people in the areas, so that they can, if there is any problem with the systems, they would actually take support from the technicians. So that's all about my presentation. Thank you. I probably have taken more time than the allocated. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much, Pavel. I was hoping not to disrupt you, because you have packed in so much information in that presentation, and we're already seeing quite a number of questions coming. But if you will give us just another 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'd like to invite Anil to just discuss some of his own observations of the IDCOL program from a World Bank perspective. World Bank was one of the initial, it was the initial funder for this program, and also contributed quite a huge amount to the program itself to help it get going. So Anil, if you could just give us your perspectives and some of the thoughts around what was these really, were they subsidies, why do we have a long chain of people who seem to be benefiting? Was that a good thing or a bad thing for the program to enable it to just, continue for the longevity of the time that it was there? So over to you, Anil. We will come to your questions. We have quite a number of questions in the chat already. And we will come to them. Some of them, the perspectives might be answered by Anil's discussion, but we will just come to each and every one of the questions after Anil. So over to you, Anil.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you very much, and thank you, Pavel, for your very insightful presentation. I would like to look at the Bangladesh experience and make a few comments on its applicability to other countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. As Pauline mentioned at the beginning, my engagement and participation and support of the Bangladesh program started well over 10 years ago, not as long as Pavel has been involved with the program, but it has been a very, very useful and learning experience for me too, which had helped me with my other work at the bank. I'd like to touch on three issues related to the subsidy. One is the form of the subsidy. The second part would be what is the right level of the subsidy. And the third is ask a sort of a provocative question: was the Bangladesh subsidy really a subsidy? And then conclude with a few general remarks. As Pavel mentioned, there were two forms of the subsidy. One is the upfront grant and the subsidized interest rate. The output-based grant was intended to reduce the cost to the customers and make the SHS more affordable and strengthen the PO's institutional capacity. Now, in the early days, in the first 50,000 systems were installed, as Pavel mentioned, there was price regulation, and after that, it was on a competitive basis. So the extent to which the subsidy was actually passed on to the customers depended on the efficiency or the pricing that the companies could offer profitably. So it's even though we've estimated what the average subsidy was, it's the extent to which the subsidy was actually passed on dependent on how efficient each of the suppliers were. Now, certainly the amount that was given was a fixed amount per solar home systems, SHS, rather than per watt peak as has been done in other countries. This approach of fixed subsidy per SHS, I think, is far more efficient and progressive than dollars per watt peak, because the smaller systems get a proportionately larger grant than the larger systems, and presumably it's the smaller systems that are purchased by the poorer household because it's more affordable. Pavel's presentation demonstrated the effectiveness of the grant and and how they and the effectiveness of which they gradually brought down the grant level, and the impact on the affordability and the appropriateness of the grant in reducing as the market matured and the technology costs declined. In addition, the loans were also said to be concessional or semi-commercial, to use Pavel's words. The question is, were they actually semi-commercial or concessional? The loan funds went through a number of different sequences. First, there were the development partner loans to the government. The government then loaned those funds to IDCOL. IDCOL loaned those funds to the POs, and the POs loan these funds to the customers. I think we have to recognize that in this project, hundreds of millions of dollars of loans financed obtained from the World Bank, etc., were ultimately delivered very, very efficiently to very rural customers in the form of loans as small as maybe $100. So that in itself is an amazing ability, because it's not easy. The transaction costs, etc., can be very, very high, and the monitoring and the governance issues related to hundreds of millions of dollars flowing from Washington down to rural Bangladesh could have many consequences. Now, at the consumer levels, IDCOL mentioned that the POs charged 12 to 16%. What I thought was flat rate interest, but Pavel tells me that it was a declining balance interest. This does make a difference. Based on my analysis, if it was a flat rate interest, this is equivalent to a 21 to 27% on a declining balance basis. This would be comparable to the average interest charged on microcredit loans in Bangladesh at that time, which averaged 22 to 24% on a declining balance basis. And in fact, the microcredit regulatory authority in Bangladesh in 2014 capped the interest rate at 27%, and then later, I think in 2016 or something, brought it down to 24%. So in my analysis, these loans were not concessional, but if 12 to 16% was indeed on a declining balance basis, then it was concessional. And this has a bearing because from a bank's point of view, our financial sector colleagues tend to frown on concessional subsidized interest loans. This is something that other countries need to watch out when they're designing their programs. At the PO level, IDCOL refinanced the POs at 6 to 9%, and the terms becoming increasingly tighter over time, and more so for larger POs. During this time, the Microcredit Regulatory Authority reported that the average cost of funds for MFIs was 7%, which is comparable to IDCOL loans to POs. So I would not consider those loans concessional. Now, IDCOL received funds in Bangladesh Taka at 3% interest from the government. This is comparable to the IDCOL's average cost of capital at that time. And so I would not consider that concessional. So at best, if 12 to 16% was on a declining balance basis, yes, I would agree then that it would be concessional. But if it was on a flat rate basis to consumers, then it would not be concessional. So there's a debate that I think Pavel and I need to discuss further. Appropriately, the financial terms for loans from development partners to the government were on concessional terms, which were either US dollars or Japanese yen. And in the case of the World Bank, they were on either terms to Bangladesh. However, government did bear the currency risk because the lending from government to IDCOL was in domestic currency. So the subsidization, yes, there was subsidization, but it was smartly done, I would argue, and it has been effective as a result show. The next question I would like to respond to is there a right level of subsidy and how should it be structured? When preparing a new SHS program in a country, it is important to determine the level of subsidization based on the willingness and ability to pay. Pavel mentioned the survey that was done in 2002 in Bangladesh to find out what the kerosene lighting expenditures were in this case. So this can be done through this type of survey or contingent value surveys to decide what level of payments are affordable to customers. However, such surveys are costly, time-consuming, and there are limitations, especially when asking about paying for services from an unfamiliar technology. IDCOL took a different approach by finding out how much people were spending for comparable services. I would suggest an alternative using household income and expenditure survey data. Such surveys are available for over 40 sub-Saharan African countries now, and the approach could be broadly applicable. I will illustrate with an example from Bangladesh using their 2010 HIES survey. The chart that you see is the HIES survey results on consumption expenditures for fuel and lighting by rural households in Bangladesh in 2010. As you can see, the poorer households, which are to the left on the x-axis, spend less than the richer households in Bangladesh taka on a monthly basis, as you would. About 50% of the households spend 530 taka, which is about $7 a month, which is comparable to the data that Pavel showed, about $5 a month for kerosene lighting. Now, using this chart, I should qualify, it works if there are no constraints on obtaining fuel and lighting services. For example, when we did our work in rural China, access to fuel was liquid fuels like kerosene was nearly impossible in the remote nomadic areas of China, and so people were spending very, very little for fuel and energy because they were using yak batter for lighting fuels, and the quality was so poor they were hardly using any at all. So that will underrepresent what's people's willingness to pay. If you go to the next chart, please. Now, in this chart, I have superimposed the monthly payment terms for various sizes of SHS after accounting for the grant, down payment, loan terms. So you can see, and then what I have done is I have shown the 20-watt peak payment for the across the household spending, the poorer households, the 40-watt peak, the middle income households, and then the 50 and 75-watt peak for the. So you could adjust these the terms of lending or subsidies to make sure that the payment amounts would correspond to the likely customers who would be buying these solar home systems. So this is another way of looking at it without having to conduct independent surveys in various countries to figure out what would be the appropriate lending terms and subsidies that would be needed. Yeah. So at the beginning of the program, when familiarity of SHS is low, the SHS repayment terms could be at or below the current expenditure, especially for low income households. This is what we see in this chart. As greater acceptance is gained, the payment could be higher, recognizing that households, especially richer ones, would be willing to pay for greater quality and levels of service, and knowing that the payment is limited to 1 to 3 years, because mobile phone charging and later on operating radio and even are services that the richer households would be able to obtain with the solar home systems, which they could not with get that quality of lighting with kerosene lighting. Finally, I would ask the question, was the Bangladesh subsidy really a subsidy? Now, Pauline mentioned this, the information in this chart during her introduction. This chart shows the stakeholder impacts and who the winners and losers were in the SHS program. Over the 15 years from 2003 to 2018. This is analysis we did as part of the Living in the Light, the Bangladesh Solar Home Systems Program report that we issued in April this year. As you can see, the households were the largest beneficiary, which is as it should, because this was a target to benefit, a program to benefit the households. IDCOL and the partner organizations benefited. The government benefited in 3 ways. One, the government earned taxes on solar home systems that were sold, primarily through duties. The second one was a kerosene subsidy that was avoided. During this time, particularly in the early years, kerosene was heavily subsidized. Then they also earned interest from the development partner loans. As I mentioned, the development partner loans were given on IDA type terms, whereas IDCOL was getting loans at 3% interest on taka. At the same time, there was a subsidy from the development partners, which on a $180 million on discounted at 10% to 2018. So it is higher than what the initial funds that were given on a current dollar basis. And then, of course, kerosene dealers lost about 56 million because they lost business. Typically, in bank project preparation, as many of you know, you would do economic and financial analysis and stakeholder impact analysis, or even though it is recommended to be done, it's hardly ever done. I know we did this in a Philippines project, but beyond that, even for the Bangladesh projects, we did economic and financial analysis only, but stakeholder analysis was not done until on an ex post basis, as we've seen here. So remember that this is based on millions of 2018 US dollars discounted at 10%. Now, you would expect in an electrification project, especially targeted at rural and especially poor consumers, the government would want to contribute something towards this program. But in this instance, the government really made quite a bit of profit or had a net benefit from this program. So therefore, one could argue that had this information been available ex ante, it would have been an effective tool during project design stage for a dialogue with the government to rationalize duties and taxes on SHS and on convincing the government to bear some of the cost of the grant. Now, as the government obtained 100% of the grant funds from the development partners, KfW, World Bank, GEF, GPOB, etc. Even though they in turn made a significant amount of money. Now, it would have been very difficult to avoid collecting the taxes on the SHS because it was not really on the taxes or duties that were charged on the whole on the solar home system, but on the individual components, batteries, lights, cables, other components which were assembled into solar home systems. So to be able to give some exemption to SHS as a whole would have been difficult from a duty point of view, but government could have contributed something towards the grant that they got from the development partners. So this kind of analysis is something that I would recommend you do, even maybe not at the detailed level which we have done here, but certainly as part of your policy dialogue with the government during project preparation, this is quite a convincing way of showing to the government that yes, their contribution towards this project is justified and it will benefit the government significantly too. So with those 3 points, I would like to conclude. To raise a couple of points. One is, as Pavel showed, the grant did decline with the SHS cost, and from 2014 onwards, only small solar home systems got a grant. However, I believe it was chart 7 that Pavel presented. While the grant was given only for small SHS after 2014, surprisingly, the market share of small SHS declined. So it is unclear why. It seems to me that the price decline of SHS at that point overwhelmed the effect of the grant. And so the question is, was the SHS grant for small systems really needed beyond 2014? The amount of money you could have saved was roughly around $14 million. So that's something to bear in mind. At some point, if you have to decide when to end the grant, this could be one signal to figure out when to end the grant. We have seen both grants and access to financing were necessary in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, with its exceptional MFI network and its microcredit history, was able to provide access to financing efficiently and relatively easy, and find stakeholders, find MFIs with experience who could do this. In many African countries, you don't have strong microcredit facilities. Delivering financing would be very difficult. We've seen this in our designs of projects. However, today, with the availability of pay-as-you-go technology integrated into an SHS, making repayments on affordable terms can be done more efficiently and at lower cost and risk, as many of these GOGLA members know, and they are using this quite effectively now in Africa. So this is another way of translating financing down to the household level by minimizing risk and making the delivery more efficient. The third point, in conclusion, competition is good, but make sure consumers and POs do not suffer from cutthroat competition by compromising quality and risk a race to the bottom. We did see in the Bangladesh program that there were negative consequences with the price coming down, where people were convincing customers to stop paying the loans and buy a new system at half the price. A typical deflationary behavior that you would see even in the housing markets in the United States that we saw. So this is something to watch out for and be aware of, that this can happen. Very rapid price increases have their advantages, but also they have their disadvantages. My concluding message to the bank and to development partners is patience is a virtue. Be a partner for these types of projects for the long term. Don't declare success or failure early and walk away. We did this in Indonesia during the financial crisis, where we walked away from the Solar Home Systems project. And in Bangladesh, you see what a 15 years of engagement can do. But just imagine if in 2006, when 50,000 SH target was achieved, and the World Bank had declared success and walked away, we would not be having this seminar if that had happened. Thank you. Pauline, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anil. Thank you both, Anil and Pavel. Now, I recognize we just have 3 minutes to the end of our time together, but we had promised that we would take your questions. And I want to ask for indulgence for just a few extra minutes after, so that we can just go through these questions. So I will request that if you have any other questions, put it in the chat box and we can take them all in. So let me start right from the top. In terms of what does PO mean, and we were able to answer that. It's a partner organizations, but then there was also a linking question as to whether the partner organizations were microfinance practitioners only. I know you touched on that, Pavel, in your presentation, but I'd like to combine that with let me just put a couple of questions together, Pavel, and you can answer them all together.
I can see the chat box.
Okay, so, all right. So maybe you just run
quickly go through the questions.
All right, thanks, Pavel. Yeah, do that.
So you actually mentioned the partner organizations is the PO is the partner organization, and they are basically the NGOs, microfinance organizations, and also private sector entities, private limited companies. So next question was, were consumers demanding subsidy for larger systems, or did the program find that the consumers were able to afford and upgrade their systems? Yeah, basically, yeah. we have seen the implementation of the program. Initially, the price was high, but with the reduction of price, because affordability actually increased significantly, and also with better equipment, actually the smaller systems are giving the similar benefit for like larger systems. So it actually increased the affordability to the customers, and so we could actually remove the subsidy for larger systems. Then another question related to REP, should I answer that? REP is still continuing, and they are very successful in dissemination. As I mentioned, that government has taken a huge program to roll out 100% electrification. So that is almost done, and most of the work was done by the REP. So they have done a commendable job in the process. So pay-as-you-go systems, one mentioned. We introduced pay-as-you-go system at the larger stage of our program, because when it started there was no such system available. But we could, if it was there, we could actually introduce them, and that would actually help us to actually ensure collection of our installments. So next question was, I have regarding the loan tenure, 5 to 7 years is longer than the average life of solar system. Average life of solar system is not 5 to 7 years actually. We have it's a 20 years time lifetime. If a battery can be is changed, then its life increases. And under our program, we provided 5 years warranty for batteries. But in practice, we have seen that many batteries are running from 8-9 years. And when the batteries were not working, we have seen that customers are replacing the batteries, and there were partner organizations present in the field to actually replace the batteries. So,
Pavel, if I may add,
sure.
The 5 to 7%, 5 to 7 year loan is actually for the loans IDCOL gave to the partner organization. The loans to solar home systems are 1 to 3 years.
This is from IDCOL to partner organizations, and so average life is not 3-4 years. It's almost 20 years. If battery is not replaced, then you can say the life is 7 to 9 years, you can say. Then, did you control the regulate the end user price, or was it completely up to the POs? Initially I mentioned in presentation, initially controlled, but at some point we have seen that the competition is there in the market, so we didn't control the price. How much price of solar systems? I don't know, but should be the answer. I have given an example of solar home system, $120 price of the system, of the 20-watt peak system. Then IDCOL inspected a very impressive, 50% of the systems, which seemed like an extraordinary exercise. Are there any lessons of verification that came out of the experience? It was actually, we as since the very beginning, we started monitoring the systems. We have seen that actually, we could actually monitor the system at a very low price. It's for one inspection, it would actually cost us $1 or $1.50, not more than that. But if we probably engaged a third party, and with that probably we could verify 5% of the total systems, and for that actually price per system inspection cost would be as high as $2,000. We have seen it in our we engage some independently, but we've seen that price is almost $2,000 for inspection of a single system, but which we can do that with our own staff for $1 or $2. So it is good actually. And also as we declare that we will go for 50% inspection, so probably POs were in mind that any system installed by them or sold by them will be inspected, so they have to ensure proper service of the system, and also they cannot actually make any false claim of selling any system. So initially we found some false claims of not installed but claimed financing support. So when we started penalizing the POs for not only reduction of subsidy, but we also penalized for each system falsely claimed. So that was actually that was not enough practice in the later stage of the program. So how did the down payment from customers evolve in time as cost decline? I mean, that remained the same almost actually. Our requirement is that customer should pay minimum 10%. So they should have some stake in the price. Otherwise, it will not work. Actually, I mean, it's free to the customers. Probably that will not work. So 10% was minimum, but we have seen that in practice it is 15%, and many systems are sold on cash. 1% of our total 4 million systems are sold on cash. The customer use SHS or other besides lighting? Yeah, definitely that they use radio, cell phones. They could charge. They could run TV in some larger systems. They could also use smaller DC fans. So I think there's the last question.
Yes, Pavel, there was one question we might have skipped, and it was about whether the one in seeing that this is in the dollar currency, how do you hedge against inflation in the local currency?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as Anil mentioned, I mean, we received the money in local currency, and we also extended the loan to POs in local currency. So basically, the example shown by me was to actually for understanding of the audience, but it was all in local currency.
The other point is that, as you saw, the government, we expect, I mean, some of the loans continue until 2040 plus years into the future, but the 3% interest charges that IDCOL was charged for the loans from the government during these 15 years, the currency depreciation in Bangladesh has been very low, thanks to a lot of remittances coming into the country. So as a result, the government has effectively been making money. The depreciation is only about 2.5% per year over these 15 odd years. So it may not be the same case we've seen in some African countries. Inflation, currency depreciation much faster than that. So if that's the case, the government would take a hit on it if they were charging only 3% interest to cover currency risk.
All right. So thank you very much.
Christoph had a question on what are the uses besides lighting that people use this for. Pavel, you may want to mention that based on the surveys.
Sorry, I missed the point actually.
Sorry, Christoph asked a question. Besides lighting, what were the main uses for electricity from solar?
Yeah, I just mentioned actually. That is, I mean, except lighting, they could charge their mobile phones. They could use LED TVs. And also in some households with larger capacity systems, they could actually run small DC fans. So these were the appliances they could use from solar home system. And another, Christoph has asked another question, was Gramin Shakti, who had also a large solar home system program. Yeah, Gramin Shakti was one of the 57 partner organizations under the program. I mean, they were the largest. They installed almost 38% of the solar home systems installed. More than 1/3 of the systems were installed by Gramin Shakti.
Yeah. There is a good question from Joyce. In the 10 years, how did you evaluate the program? How many times did the structure evolve?
So you must like to take the question.
Yeah, I think one important innovation, institutional innovation in the program was the operations committee that Pavel mentioned right from the beginning, because this was a means from which IDCOL met with all the partner organization representatives once a month, chaired by IDCOL chairman. So it was a very high level meeting through which they exchanged information, and they were able to adjust and adapt to and react relatively quickly to changes in the marketplace and the feedback they were getting. And also for IDCOL to convey, this is long before there was such thing as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, to be able to communicate directly and quickly with the partner organization, get changes affected. Today, this kind of communication can be far more efficient with the tools that we have today.
Thank you very much. I think we still have one last question we haven't addressed, but I believe it's, oh, now there's two. So there's one question about interesting to know the O&M of SHS, and the last quick question, two last quick questions actually. Yeah, three last questions. It seems they keep flowing in.
Yeah, so I mean, operational maintenance of solar systems. Yeah, operational maintenance. That was actually, I mean, program structure is like that actually. I mean, if solar systems were not maintained properly, I mean, that service was not provided, then customers would not actually pay installments. So when you go for collecting monthly installment from household, if the system is not working, you have to make sure that the system operates. Then only you can take the money. Otherwise, customers are not going to pay the installment. So that's how, I mean, and also we had, as I mentioned, we have visited more than 50% solar systems. So we also have seen that, I mean, the maintenance is done properly. In some cases, we have seen that customers are very smart. They are bypassing the charge controller. They are using their system for overusing their capacity of the solar system. So we will also try to address those. So that is about the maintenance of the solar systems. And also I mentioned that for maintenance, we provided training to many PO staffs. Almost all the PO staffs were trained by us. Then another question is where customers, households able to buy more than one subsidy system? No, I mean, in that case, actually, the PO had to actually report to us that this is the second system sold under the program. So for that, we didn't provide any subsidy, but they could actually avail the refinancing facility from us. Yeah. And the next question is probably, I mean, is to Anil actually. Okay. Comparison between PSG, Indonesia, and IDCOL solutions.
Yeah, I think these were the Indonesia project was 1996, almost a generation before the IDCOL program. The main from an operational point of view, there was not much of a difference between the two project support group in Indonesia and IDCOL's management system. The main difference, I would say, is Indonesia. It was a foreign company that was contracted to be the project support group. Now, that is compared to IDCOL running the program. The Indonesia program naturally became very expensive, less grounded to the reality on the ground in the country, and so therefore not as effective as how it was done in Bangladesh or even in Sri Lanka, where local companies were able to were the lead implementing agency. So if I had a choice, I would go with the Bangladesh approach or the Sri Lanka approach, and rather than bringing in foreign contractors. And as Pavel said, even the monitoring and evaluation of these systems in the field can be incredibly expensive and prohibitively expensive. Just to give you a data point, when we did the evaluation of this program, the total management cost to IDCOL for running this program came to about 1% of the project cost, just 1%. If you were doing it with foreign companies, you're talking about very, very much higher costs. There's one more question,
yes,
Pavel, on the grid extension.
Yeah. So when there was a buyback option under the program between the partner organization and the customer. So if they want to stop paying installment, they want to actually return the system. So there was an arrangement. So at different years, maybe for first year there was 20% reduction of the price. Then in second year another 10-15%. So there was an arrangement between, I mean, that came during implementation of the program. So you incorporated that in our, agreement between the customer and the PO. And so they could do that, but we have seen that the customers are not actually returning the system, because after 3-4 years, you can see that the price, remaining price of solar system is much lower compared to what they have bought. So they could, and still the system is in operation. So what the customers did, they actually used the solar system for their lighting load, and they used the electricity from rural electrification board, grid electricity for other purposes. So they still continued with the solar system, and also grid was not very stable. So that they used to actually use it as alternate to actually the kerosene lamps when there is no electricity from grid.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Eva, I will ask you to just directly engage with us as we answer, because now that's going into a lot more detail than we're able to. We are already 15 minutes over time on this webinar. I want to thank you for your patience. Most of you have stayed with us. And so if I just reach out to us and we can just, be in contact with both Pavel and Anil and provide further details. And that's the whole purpose of the this subsidy lab, is to provide a learning environment where we're actually able to find practical knowledge that helps us to do practical application on the ground. So without belaboring any point, I really want to thank you, Pavel, for such a rich presentation that you have given us today. There is just so much that we can pick up as, as we're going along. I was also picking up points, but it's also interesting from Anil's, analysis and discussing the whole model, how everybody benefited. And in fact, in some instances where, a lot of governments shy away from the subsidy conversation because they expect that they will be putting in a lot of money, that in the Bangladesh case, actually the government has made quite a bit of money on that. So I really want to thank everyone who's joined us today. Thank you again, Pavel and Anil, for just such a rich discussion. Feel free to reach out to us at the Subsidy Lab for more information, and Eva will put you in touch with Pavel so that you can have this conversation at a deeper level. So with those few remarks, again, want to thank Gogla and SMAP and the partnership together with A-Staff for availing this opportunity for us to discuss and to have this platform where we can actually have more meaningful conversations in a deeper way, and with the end in goal that we will be doing something. We will actually be doing practical things on the ground, and we will see more of these models, different kinds of models according to the different contexts being rolled out, and the most important thing being that we're able to find and achieve energy access for all. So thank you very, very much. And with those few remarks, I want to wish you a good afternoon, good evening, and keep looking out for more information from the End User Subsidy Lab as we continue to provide such platforms for learning. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.